My name is Audrey Sinclair. I'm 33 years old, a high school art teacher, and last Thanksgiving, I watched my 6-year-old daughter get slapped across the face by her uncle, my older brother Derek. And the worst part, my parents laughed. Not nervous laughter, not shocked or confused, but actual eyes, crinkled smug chuckles, like it was some kind of twisted sitcom. That moment didn't just break something in me. It burned every fragile thread I'd been clinging to, pretending we were still some kind of family. I wish I could say it came out of nowhere, that the slap was a freak moment in an otherwise decent day. But the truth is, it was a boiling point. Years, decades even, of emotional landmines, favoritism, subtle cruelty, and the unspoken rule in my family that Derek could do no wrong. And I was always too emotional, too soft, too dramatic. I was the difficult one. The scapegoat. Even as a kid, I knew I was playing a role I never auditioned for. My brother Derek is 5 years older than me, a lawyer with a sharp jaw and a sharper ego. He was the golden boy from day one, captain of the debate team's straight-A student law school scholarship. My parents, Howard and Eleanor Sinclair, practically raised him on a pedestal. Every dinner conversation growing up revolved around Derek's triumphs, his awards, his internship, his latest courtroom win. Meanwhile, I was just trying to get through school without having a panic attack. Art was the only thing that made me feel like I had a voice. But in our house, a sketchbook wasn't an achievement. It was a distraction. Mom used to tell me I was too sensitive, that I read too much into things. Like when I noticed she never hung up my drawings on the fridge, but Derek's 4th grade spelling bee trophy stayed in the china cabinet until I was 27. Or how Dad would cut me off mid-sentence to ask Derek about his job, even when I was telling him something important. I learned to shrink myself down, to not expect attention, let alone respect, that conditioning. It stuck. After college, I got my teaching certification and took a job at a public school in town. I married Miles, a fellow teacher, sweet but too quiet. And when we had Lily, our world shifted in the best way. But Miles left when Lily was 2, said he needed to find himself, whatever that means. I didn't fight it. I had a daughter to raise, and I was used to being left behind. What I wasn't used to was watching my own parents replicate the same favoritism with Lily that they dished out to me. They adored Derek's son. James spoiled him with Legos and trips to science museums. Lily got coloring books from the dollar bin. When I confronted Mom about it once, she brushed it off. Lily's a quiet child. She doesn't need as much stimulation. Like neglect was a personality-based parenting strategy. Still, I tried. Every holiday, every birthday I showed up. With gifts, with pie, with hope. Hope that maybe this year they'd see us. Really see us. So when I got the invite for Thanksgiving this year, I hesitated. It came from Mom, as usual, via a chirpy voicemail. "We'd love to see you and Lily. Derek and Natalie will be there. Bring your famous cranberry tart." I almost said no, almost. But then Lily overheard the message and lit up. "We get to see Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Derek." She didn't know. She still believed in the idea of family, and I couldn't bear to take that away from her. So I said yes. I baked that damn tart, and I put on my forest green sweater dress and made sure Lily wore the hand-stitched sunflower necklace she made in class. She was so proud of it, said it was her lucky charm. We arrived just before dinner. The house was decked out in its usual holiday excess gold candles, velvet table runners, Mom's antique china. Derek and his wife Natalie were already there with James, now a smug 10-year-old who clearly inherited his father's gift for dominance. Lily offered him a shy smile, and he rolled his eyes. I noticed. So did Derek. He smirked. Dinner started out tense as always. Derek dominated the conversation, bragging about a recent case where he got some tech CEO out of a white-collar charge. Dad laughed so hard he had to wipe tears from his eyes. Mom chirped in about how Derek was born to lead. I said nothing. Lily picked at her peas. Then it happened. Lily reached for the gravy boat, her hand knocking Derek's wine glass, which spilled onto his precious cufflink. He exploded. Not verbally, not with words, just a sharp, open-palmed crack across her tiny face. Time froze. Lily froze. And then she started crying. My 6-year-old, who had never even been scolded at school, sat there sobbing, one cheek red with the mark of my brother's hand. I stood up so fast my chair tipped over. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I screamed. "Derek," he just shrugged. "She needs to learn to be more careful." Mom sipped her wine like nothing had happened. Dad chuckled and muttered, "Kids these days know discipline." That's when I knew. We weren't family. We were participants in a performance one where abuse was decorum and silence was loyalty. I grabbed Lily, still shaking, and we left. Back in the car, I held her while she cried herself to sleep. I was shaking too, not just from rage, but from shame. Shame that I had let it get this far, that I kept bringing her into the same toxic dynamic I swore I'd protect her from. That night, I tucked her into bed with the sunflower necklace clutched in her small hand and sat on the bathroom floor until dawn, trying to figure out how to burn a legacy without setting myself on fire. The next day, I called Paul. Uncle Paul, technically, my mom's estranged younger brother. He was the only relative who had ever shown up for me. When I was 17 and ran away after one of Dad's outbursts, Paul let me crash on his couch for 2 weeks and never told anyone. He was a documentary filmmaker, now semi-retired, with a sharp wit and a sharper moral compass. I hadn't talked to him in over a year, but he picked up on the first ring. "Audrey." I didn't even say hello. I just said, "I need your help." Paul didn't hesitate. "Name it." And that's how it started. That's how I went from being the black sheep to the storm that would tear this family's house of cards down. We started simple. Paul had years of experience with interview-style doc work, and we started recording. Not just my story, but Lily's when she was ready. Quietly, carefully. We used a lapel mic Paul lent me. I wore it to the school function where Derek tried to act like the doting uncle, caught his slip-ups, his condescension, his lies. We weren't building a legal case. Not yet. We were building truth. Documentation. And when the time was right, we'd let the world decide if the Sinclairs were still worthy of their perfect image. Because I wasn't just a teacher or a sister or even a mother anymore. I was a storyteller. And this story, it wasn't over. Next time I'll tell you how my mother tried to sabotage my custody rights and the recording that flipped everything. It started with a knock on the door 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. Not loud, not frantic, just that sharp, polite kind of knocking that makes your gut twist before your brain even catches up. I was in the kitchen with Lily, who was finger painting a lopsided reindeer on the fridge. Her sunflower necklace was tucked into her collar, a habit she'd picked up ever since the dinner. She hadn't taken it off, not even for showers. I didn't push. We all hold on to armor where we can. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door to find a woman in a tan coat clutching a leather folder like it had teeth. She looked like someone who smelled like lemon-scented sanitizer and had a stack of protocols memorized. "Audrey Sinclair," she asked. "I'm Rachel from Child Protective Services. We received a report." Time stopped for a second. My first instinct was panic. "Lily, what happened?" But I knew better. This wasn't about her safety. This was about them. "May I come in?" she asked, voice flat professional. I nodded, because what else do you do when the state shows up at your door? Rachel sat on the edge of my couch like she didn't want to catch poor person germs. I sat across from her, adrenaline pounding behind my ears. "We received an anonymous report alleging instability in your household and possible emotional harm to your daughter." I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. Emotional harm from me. "I understand this is upsetting," Rachel said, not looking up from her notepad. "These are just preliminary inquiries. We're required to follow up." Lily peeked in from the kitchen, her little fingers covered in brown and green paint. "Mom, the reindeer's tail is weird," she said, smiling. Rachel smiled at her and then made a note. I felt my blood chill. After she left, I called Paul. "Let me guess," he said before I even finished the story. "Eleanor made the call. I'd bet my old camera rig on it." I wanted to argue, but deep down, I knew. My mom didn't do confrontation. She did precision sabotage. Always with a smile, always pretending it was for your own good. A week later, I got a letter from a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, Derek's firm. The same ivory tower that defended oil companies and hedge fund execs. The letter was written in friendly legalese, but the message was razor sharp. My mother was petitioning for joint guardianship of Lily. Her claim concerns regarding Audrey Sinclair's emotional stability and capacity to provide a structured home environment. I read it 3 times before I threw up. That weekend, I packed Lily's bag and drove to Paul's place 2 hours outside the city. His cabin was a converted barn filled with books and warm lamps and old film equipment. Lily loved it instantly, said it smelled like old wood and peanut butter. That night when she was asleep, I broke down. Paul let me cry, didn't say a word until I was done. "You need to hit back," he said simply. "Not with fists, with facts." "But what do I even do?" I asked, exhausted. "They've got money, they've got power." Paul leaned forward. "You've got truth, and I've got gear. Let's make them regret underestimating you." So we recorded. More than just interviews, this time we built a record. A timeline. Paul helped me dig up old voicemails, emails, even Christmas cards with passive-aggressive barbs. We interviewed old teachers, neighbors, people who'd seen the favoritism firsthand. The stories were small, but together they painted a mural. Not of monsters, but of people who had systematically chipped away at a child's self-worth and were now coming for her child too. Paul uploaded everything to a private cloud under the project name Sunflower. It was Lily's idea. She said sunflowers always turn toward the light, even when things were dark. It gutted me. In the meantime, CPS cleared me. Rachel made 2 more visits, sat with Lily, observed our routines. At the last visit, she smiled genuinely this time and said, "She's a happy kid. You're doing something right." But the legal fight wasn't over. Mom had money and a polished lawyer. I had a burnt-out school district attorney who meant well, but had 300 cases on her plate. So I did the only thing I could. I played dirty. I reached out to Natalie, Derek's wife. Now Natalie had always been reserved, thin as a reed, icy as marble. But I remembered something from that Thanksgiving night, right after the slap, right before I grabbed Lily. I saw Natalie flinch. Just a tiny muscle in her jaw, but it was there. And when she saw me looking, she looked away fast. I found her work email through her design portfolio website. Sent a single line. "You flinched. I saw it." She responded 5 days later. "You have 10 minutes. Coffee shop on 19th. Don't be late." I went, sat across from her while she stirred her latte like she was trying to wear down the spoon. She didn't waste time. "He hits James too," she said quietly. "Never where it shows, but yeah." I felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered. "Because I'm trapped. But if you're doing something, I want in. I want out. I just need a reason. Proof." I pulled out a small flash drive. "Paul's been compiling everything. We've got voice recordings, footage, documentation. You'll be protected." She looked at the drive like it might explode, but she took it. The next week, Natalie filed for divorce. And that's when all hell broke loose. Suddenly, the Sinclair name was being whispered about in circles that didn't tolerate domestic violence. Natalie's attorney was smart. She didn't go public, but she leaked the threat. High-profile family under investigation. It was vague enough not to trigger lawsuits, but specific enough that Derek's firm started to sweat. Mom called me 3 times. I didn't answer. The 4th time, she left a voicemail. "I don't know what you think you're doing, Audrey, but you're destroying this family. Lily doesn't need to grow up in scandal." I saved it. Uploaded it to the Sunflower folder. 3 days later, Dad showed up at my apartment. Drunk, red-faced, slurring. "You're tearing us apart. You're making your mother sick. You think anyone cares about your little victim act?" I didn't let him in. But my neighbor's security camera caught the whole thing. It was like the final puzzle piece. Paul and I sat in his studio that weekend looking at all the files. The digital sunflower bloomed wider than we expected. Testimonies, photos, screenshots, receipts. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Enough to burn the illusion. "Do we go public?" Paul asked. I looked at Lily coloring on the rug beside us. She had drawn a house, our apartment, with 3 sunflowers out front. "Not yet," I said. "Not until I know she's safe." But Natalie did something better. She sent the drive to Derek's law firm. No press, just a quiet internal investigation triggered by HR. 2 weeks later, Derek was suspended. 3 weeks later, he resigned. The family tried to keep it quiet. They told neighbors Derek was taking a sabbatical and that Natalie had personal reasons for moving out. But the truth had legs, and people talk, especially when perfect masks start to crack. Mom withdrew her guardianship claim, officially for the sake of peace, but really, because her golden son's halo was slipping fast and she knew she couldn't take the moral high ground anymore. We didn't celebrate. We weren't popping champagne. But one night, Lily crawled into bed with me, curled up close, and said I like our house. It's quiet. I feel brave here. That was enough, until the next letter arrived. This time from a lawyer I didn't recognize. A cousin of Howard's, an estate attorney. Mr. Howard Sinclair is placing the family home in a trust. You are not named, Lily is not named, you are formally disinherited. No inheritance, no rights, no history. Just gone. It shouldn't have hurt. Not after everything. But it did. Because even when you escape the fire part of you still hopes the people inside might run out after you. I sat on the porch that night, watching the moon hang low like a quiet question, and thought about everything we'd lost and what we'd built instead. Sunflowers. Next time, I'll tell you how Paul convinced me to release the story, not just for revenge, but for everyone else still stuck in families like mine. And what happened when strangers started calling, saying I thought I was the only one. We all hold on to armor where we can. For Lily, it was that little sunflower necklace. For me, it was a folder labeled Sunflower. Inside audio files, scanned emails, printed texts, handwritten statements. It was everything we had collected over the past few months. Truth stripped bare, organized by pain. Paul and I were sitting on his cabin floor, surrounded by sticky notes and old hard drives. It was late, the kind of cold night where even the fire in the wood stove couldn't chase the draft out. Lily was asleep upstairs, buried in flannel and blankets that smelled like cedar and old comfort. I looked over the folder again. If I put this out there, there's no going back. Paul didn't answer right away. He handed me a mug of tea and said, "The only way forward is through. You can stay quiet and protect the illusion, or speak and risk everything, but maybe help someone else break free too." That line stuck with me. Protect the illusion. That was exactly what my family had always done. Polished the outside while the foundation rotted underneath. Mom used to say, what happens in the family stays in the family, as if silence was a virtue. But silence was just another word for complicity. I spent the next few days doing nothing but listening. Not to music, to the recordings. Derek's voice, Dad's snide comments, even Natalie's whispered truths. I needed to feel every second of it make peace with the weight before putting it in someone else's hands. Then I made the call. His name was Miles Robinson, a friend of Paul's from the documentary circuit. He ran a podcast called The Broken Table, a series where people shared the unspoken fractures inside families. It had a decent following, not viral, but respected. He listened to my pitch over the phone, silent the whole time. Then he said, "You're not just exposing your family, you're holding a mirror up to a lot of others. That's powerful, but you need to be ready for backlash." "I've had backlash since I was 5, I said. "This time I'm choosing it." We worked out the logistics. We'd do a 3-part audio series with my voice narrating excerpts from the recordings and commentary from experts, therapists, family counselors, lawyers. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about making people feel what generational abuse looks like when it hides behind tablecloths and Sunday dinners. The night before the first episode dropped, I couldn't sleep. Lily was curled up next to me, mouth slightly open, breathing soft. I traced the sunflower necklace around her neck. I wanted to believe she'd never have to know the kind of heartbreak I did. But that was naive. The best I could do was teach her what courage looks like when it's shaking in your boots and speaking anyway. Episode 1 aired on a Tuesday. By Thursday, the downloads passed 100,000. By Saturday, they were climbing toward 500,000. I didn't look at the comments at first. Paul warned me not to, but I did. Some were brutal. Bitter sister trying to bring down a successful man. Typical single mom victim complex. Sounds like she's jealous her brother turned out better. But most were something else entirely. My mom called me dramatic too. I haven't spoken to her in years. My older brother abused me, and no one believed me. Thank you for saying it out loud. This is the first time I've heard someone describe my childhood. I cried the whole drive to work. I hadn't expected that. I thought it'd be a niche thing. Instead, it was like a dam broke. That weekend, I got an email from a woman named Elena. She was a therapist in Chicago who specialized in family systems. She asked if she could quote parts of my story in a workshop she was leading on inherited trauma. Inherited trauma. That hit like a brick. Because that's what this was. A passed-down sickness dressed up as tradition. And somewhere along the line, I decided it would end with me. Then came the article. The local paper, of all things. Some hungry columnist picked up the podcast, connected a few names, and wrote a story titled, "When the Perfect Family Isn't the Real Life of the Sinclairs." They blurred Lily's name, thank God. But not mine, or Derek's, or my parents'. The fallout was immediate. Derek called me from a blocked number. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "You think this makes you some kind of hero? You're just bitter. You've always been bitter. You'll die alone and bitter." I forwarded the message to Paul and deleted it. Then Natalie called. I hesitated before picking up, but something in me said to listen. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice tight. "I will be," I said. I've been getting threats, anonymous messages, people blaming me for not stopping him. "That's not your fault," I said, and I meant it. "I know," she said, "but it still hurts. And I wanted you to know I told James. Everything, not the podcast, but what his father did, what I let slide." There was a long pause. "He didn't cry," she whispered. He just nodded and said, "That makes sense." That broke me in a way nothing else had. Because that's what cycles do. They don't just bruise you, they reshape how you expect to be treated. After that, I stayed off social media for a week. I taught my classes, made Lily's lunches, rewatched old movies at night just to keep my brain still. But it was like trying to hold your breath in a hurricane. Then came the email from the Today Show. They wanted to interview me. Live, with Paul. About the podcast, the story, and what it meant for other families. I stared at the screen for a full 5 minutes. Then I said yes. The studio was sterile and cold, full of makeup lights and nervous producers. I wore a gray dress and a pin Lily had made me in art class. A tiny felt sunflower with lopsided petals. She hugged me before I left and said, "Say the brave things, Mommy." I did. I sat there under the lights and told America what it meant to be invisible in your own family. What it felt like to watch your daughter be struck and hear your parents laugh. What it meant to finally say no more. And when it ended, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted, but also light. That night, when we got back to Paul's place, he handed me a box. Inside was a camera. His old Canon, the one he used to shoot indie films in the 90s. "I want you to have it," he said. "Tell your own stories now." I cried, again. A week later, something unexpected happened. I got a letter. Not from a lawyer, not from a troll. From my mother. It was handwritten, 3 pages long, no return address. She didn't apologize. Not really. She said she was surprised by how I'd twisted things. Said she hoped Lily would grow up to forgive me. But on the last page, there was something else. A photo. It was from when I was 8. I was holding a papier-mâché sunflower I'd made in school. I was smiling. Derek was in the background, scowling. On the back, she had written, "You always looked for light. I just couldn't see it." I sat with that for a long time, because I don't know what that meant. Regret, guilt, another manipulation. But I folded it up and put it in the sunflower folder anyway, because stories aren't always neat, and closure isn't always final. The next chapter. Well, that one starts with Lily asking if she can plant real sunflowers in the front yard this spring, and me saying yes. Let's grow our own field. It started with a seed, literally. Lily brought it home from school in a paper towel-wrapped Dixie cup. One tiny sunflower seed tucked into damp cotton. "We're growing these for Mother's Day," she said, beaming. "Can we plant more at home?" The irony nearly made me laugh. After everything, sunflowers kept showing up. In necklaces, drawings, voicemails, podcasts, now in soil. And maybe it was silly. Maybe symbolic crap like that doesn't mean anything. But I bought a bag of seeds anyway. We cleared a corner of Paul's backyard that weekend, just the two of us. Lily in her overalls and rubber boots, me still in an old hoodie, hair tied back with no makeup. She dug tiny holes and whispered to each seed like she was casting a spell. "Grow strong. Don't be afraid. Drink lots of sun." I let her. Hell, I needed those blessings too. Meanwhile, the world kept turning. The podcast was still climbing, getting translated into Spanish, French, even Turkish. Paul fielded licensing offers. A small press asked if I'd turn it into a book. My inbox flooded daily. People reaching out with stories I couldn't unread. Men and women 20 to 70 saying I thought I was the only one. I started replying at night after Lily went to bed. At first, it was a handful of people, then dozens. Then I stopped counting. Some asked questions, others just wanted to say thank you. But the ones that got me were the ones who asked what to do next. I left my parents, I moved states. But I still feel guilty. How do you teach your child not to internalize the damage? Is there a way to heal if your abuser is still alive and denying it? I didn't have all the answers, but I knew this much being believed was a start. So I started a forum. Nothing fancy, just a simple site called Breaking the Chain with a blog and message board. For anyone raised in silence surviving in truth. I used a stock sunflower in the banner. Subtle, familiar, hopeful. It grew faster than I expected. Paul helped me moderate along with 2 women I met through the podcast, Jamie from Oregon and Rena from Wisconsin. We hosted Zoom chats, shared journal prompts. Eventually, we launched a story archive, anonymous submissions from people brave enough to write it down. It felt good, real, but it also felt dangerous, because with attention comes risk. And in my case, risk had a name. Howard Sinclair, my father. I hadn't heard from him since the night he showed up drunk at my door. But he must have seen the articles, or heard the interviews, or maybe someone from his golf club asked, "Is that your daughter on NPR?" Because one morning, I got served, right outside my classroom. Lily was with a student intern in the art room, and I was just stepping out to check the kiln temp when a man in khakis approached me, handed me an envelope, and said, "Audrey Sinclair." My throat dried before I even opened it. Defamation, civil complaint, emotional damages, libel. Filed by Howard Sinclair and Sinclair Family Holdings. Paul paced his cabin when I told him. "You knew this was coming." "I hoped it wouldn't," I said quietly. "They think they can bully you into silence." "Old game. New century. But they might win," I whispered. "He has resources. I have a school salary and a beat-up Corolla." "You have something he doesn't," Paul said. "You have receipts and a community." He wasn't wrong. But fear isn't always rational. Fear creeps in like water under the door, even when you've built high walls. It tells you your voice isn't strong enough, that maybe you imagine the slap, that maybe you are dramatic, that maybe they're right. But then Lily did something. She wrote a poem. I found it tucked into her backpack, scrawled in glitter pen. "My mom is strong. She doesn't wear capes. She wears sweaters with soup stains. She draws when she's sad. She grows flowers that stand up tall. She makes pancakes on Thursdays and says you're safe like a spell." I cried in the school parking lot. Then I drove straight to the courthouse. I filed a counterclaim. Not for money, for acknowledgement. I added documents, dates, copies of police statements, witness letters, screenshots from the family group chat where Mom mocked my overreactions. I even attached that voicemail she left after the podcast dropped. And then I published a new blog post, "What They Do When You Tell the Truth." It didn't go viral, it detonated. That post got quoted by The Guardian, picked up by survivor networks. Therapists started referencing it in workshops. Schools reached out asking if I'd speak to staff about navigating difficult family disclosures. Me, a high school art teacher who once forgot to defrost a chicken nugget dinner for 3 straight nights. Still, I showed up, spoke, shook, cried sometimes. And everywhere I went, someone would pull me aside and whisper, "Your dad reminds me of mine," or "My aunt says I exaggerate too," or "I made my daughter a necklace after I heard your story." Sunflowers were popping up like secret handshakes. Then came the twist. Natalie called again. "He's trying to spin it," she warned. "Derek," I asked. "No, Howard." Apparently, my dad had started doing damage control, donated to women's shelters, posted vaguely empowering messages on Facebook about healing and forgiveness, claimed the podcast was a creative reimagining, and he was proud his daughter was speaking her truth, even if it was painful to hear. I laughed out loud. Paul didn't. "This is his PR pivot," Paul said. "He knows the suit's weak, so he's shifting the story." What do I do? You dropped the hammer. So we did. We released part 4 of the podcast, Legacy and Lies. It featured old audio of Howard joking about putting kids in their place, a former employee describing his anger management issues, a therapist breaking down the golden child scapegoat dynamic in elite families, and me, tired raw but still speaking. I am not trying to ruin anyone, I said in the closing. I'm trying to build something better than the silence I grew up in. After that, the lawsuit disappeared. Quietly, privately, like it had never happened. But something else happened too. I got a letter. This time not from Mom, from a woman named Sophie Carter. She was 73, from Vermont. Said she had grown up with Eleanor, my mother. I knew her when she was 14, Sophie wrote. She was brilliant, funny, sharp-tongued. But her mother was cruel, cold as a steel tap. Sophie went on to describe a woman who shamed Eleanor for crying, who slapped her for smiling too long at boys who said things like, "You think you're better than me because you read books." She wasn't always like this, Sophie wrote. She was made. I sat with that for a long time, because I didn't want to excuse her. But I also couldn't deny the pattern. My grandmother, Eleanor Howard, me, the chain. That night, Lily and I watered our little sunflower patch. Some of the stems were rising now, small but steady. Lily pointed at one and said, "That one's mine. It's the tallest. I think it's winning." I smiled, knelt beside her and said, "You know what the secret is?" "What?" "It doesn't matter how tall it is. It matters that it kept growing." She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe she would more than I ever had the chance to at her age. As we headed inside, I saw a notification on my phone. An email, subject line TEDx inquiry. The inheritance we choose to end. And I knew, this wasn't over. It was just blooming. The TEDx stage wasn't as glamorous as I imagined. It was a small theater at a local university with red carpeting that smelled like dust and lemon cleaner and a mic that kept cutting out during rehearsal. But when I stood behind that podium, I felt taller than I ever had. Not because I was famous, not because I was important, but because for the first time I wasn't hiding. The talk was called The Inheritance We Choose to End. I spent 3 weeks writing and rewriting it. I rehearsed in my car and my bathtub during walks with Lily. I even did a dry run in Paul's living room, where he gave me notes like, "More you less literature, professor," and let them feel the bruise, not the lecture. So I stood on that stage in jeans and a black sweater, wearing Lily's crooked felt sunflower pinned to my collar. And I told the world what it looked like when generational damage dressed up in good manners and passed itself off as tradition. I told them about my family, about Derek, about the slap. But I also told them about my mother, how silence had become her language, how denial was her survival tool. I didn't excuse her, but I didn't dehumanize her either. I said, we don't get to choose where we're planted, but we do get to choose whether we keep passing the poison down the roots. The audience didn't clap right away when I finished. They just sat, still, quiet. And I thought maybe I'd said too much. Then someone stood, then another. Then a wave of applause rolled in, not loud, not explosive, but steady, real. Later in the green room, I cried, hard. Paul hugged me so tight, I felt the years fall off my shoulders like dead weight. My inbox exploded again. Conference invites, interviews. One message just said, "You planted a forest, Audrey. Keep watering it." But the biggest shock came the following week. A letter again, but this time not handwritten. Typed, neat, from Eleanor. Not Eleanor Sinclair, just Eleanor. She wrote, "You said a lot of things I didn't want to hear. Some were untrue, some were exaggerated, but some hurt because they weren't lies. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'd like to see Lily, just once. No talking, no speeches, just a park bench and a juice box." I didn't answer, not right away. I sat with it for 3 days, thought about everything, the birthday cards with the wrong age, the time she called Lily emotional because she cried at a movie, the way she'd smoothed over every blow Derek ever threw, literal or otherwise, with, "He didn't mean it." But I also thought about Sophie's letter. The steel-cold mother Eleanor had grown up with. The cycle that doesn't start with the people who break it, starts with the people who were never allowed to feel. So I called her, not to agree, just to hear her voice. She answered on the second ring. "Hello, it's me. I know." Long pause. "I meant what I wrote," she said. "I'm not asking to fix things, just to witness." I didn't know what to say, so we made a plan. A public park, a short visit. No hugs, no pretending. Lily didn't know it was her grandmother at first. I didn't tell her until the car ride there. She blinked. "Will she hit me?" "No, sweetheart. I would never let that happen." "Will she say mean things?" "Maybe, but we're not staying if she does." Lily nodded. That was enough. We met at a park by the lake. Early spring, breezy. The kind of day where everything smells like thawing earth and possibility. Eleanor was already sitting when we got there. Hair gray, now neatly pinned. a cardigan draped over her shoulders. She stood when we approached but didn't move forward. Smart. Hi, Lily said, clutching my hand. Eleanor smiled. Not fake, just tired. Hello, Lily. I brought apple juice and gummy bears. Lily looked up at me. I nodded. She walked over slowly and sat beside her. Not too close, but she didn't flinch. I stayed standing, arms crossed, heart racing like a drumline. They sat in silence mostly. Lily talked about her sunflower garden. Eleanor listened. Then Eleanor said something that made my breath catch. You're going to grow up strong, she said. Not because you were broken, but because your mother taught you how to rebuild. I didn't cry. Not there. We left 10 minutes later. That was enough. In the car, Lily asked, Is she still mean? I thought about it. No, I said. I think she's just sad. Like sick sad or soul sad. I looked at her through the rearview mirror. Soul sad, I said. She nodded like she understood. That night, I sat in Paul's kitchen while he roasted carrots and played an old Springsteen record. I asked him if I'd done the right thing. You gave her a boundary and a glimpse, he said. That's more than most people get. Then he poured me wine and said, You ready for what's next? I looked at him. What is next? He smiled. We're making a documentary. I blinked. A what? You've got everything you need. Story, footage, following, and a hell of a message. It's not just a podcast now, Audrey. This is a movement. The idea terrified me, but it also sparked something. Because maybe telling the truth once was brave, but telling it on film in public forever, that was legacy. We started filming that month. Quiet interviews, B-roll of Lily in the garden, shots of old family photos burned at the edges, slowly drifting into frame. We called it Sunflowers Don't Whisper. And I didn't know it yet, but that film would change more than just my life. Because just when I thought the story was settling, life sent one final twist. A letter from Derek. No envelope, no return address, just a torn page folded once placed on my windshield at school. One sentence. You should be careful what you dig up sometimes, roots snap back. That night, I locked every door in the house. Because the past doesn't like being unearthed. And sometimes, it fights back. The night I found Derek's note on my windshield, I didn't sleep. I checked every window, walked the perimeter twice, double-locked the door. I lay in bed next to Lily, feeling the weight of his words coil around my spine like a vine choking a fence post. You should be careful what you dig up, sometimes roots snap back. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning or a promise. And I believed him, because I knew Derek. I knew how entitlement worked when it was threatened. It didn't scream or fight fair. It schemed. It waited. And just when you let your guard down, it made you pay for speaking out of turn. Paul tried to brush it off. Coward's bark. If he really had teeth, he wouldn't be leaving notes, he'd be calling lawyers. But I knew better. Derek didn't want lawsuits. He wanted silence. He wanted me small. And if he couldn't beat me in public, he'd try in private. So I made a choice. We finished the documentary. Fast. It wasn't perfect. There were parts I wished we could polish, interviews we had to shoot in cluttered bedrooms with bad lighting. But it had a heart, a pulse, and more than anything, it had truth. Not just mine, but dozens of others who came forward. Survivors, storytellers, even one former Sinclair Holdings employee who described Derek in ways I never even imagined, how he threatened people with job losses, made passes at interns' doctored invoices. Nothing criminal, but everything patterned. We submitted it to 4 festivals. 3 said no. The 4th, an Indie Doc Fest in Colorado, said yes. I flew there with Paul and Lily. It was her first time on a plane. She gripped my hand on takeoff sunflower necklace around her neck like armor. She looked out the window wide-eyed. Mom, she whispered, we're above the clouds. At the festival, the theater only seated 80. The chairs were hard. The popcorn was stale. But when the credits rolled and the lights came up, a man in the front row stood and clapped. Then another. Then all of them. After a woman cornered me in the lobby. Mid-40s, corporate blazer, tear-streaked face. I told my mom I'd never speak to her again, she said. But I just bought a ticket to fly home next week. Not because I want to fix it, but because I want to say out loud what she did. One time, for me. That was when I understood sometimes healing doesn't mean closure. Sometimes it means clarity. The film got picked up for streaming, nothing huge, just a small platform focused on social justice media. But the night it went live, my old high school principal emailed me. I showed the film to our staff. and our juniors. We had an hour of silence after. Then the talking didn't stop. That same week, the school district where I worked asked me to speak at a staff summit. I wasn't an expert. I wasn't a therapist. But I knew what it felt like to be a kid who was told their feelings were too much and who learned to shrink around authority. So I said yes. That's when everything changed again. Because Derek didn't just snap back with threats. He went public. An op-ed. In a business magazine of all places. My family's story was taken hostage by social media and the truth is complicated. He didn't name me, but he didn't have to. He used words like sensationalized, distorted, selective truth. He played the victim card so well, I half believed it for a second. And the comments, they flooded in. Some defended me, but some turned fast. Cancel culture strikes again. Not everything is abuse. She sounds ungrateful. And just like that, the tide felt colder. Paul called me furious. We should sue him. But I didn't want another fight. I wanted something else. So I did something risky. I invited Eleanor to a panel I was speaking at in the city public, recorded with audience Q&A. She didn't say yes, but she showed up, sat in the back row, sunglasses on, hands shaking. I didn't call her out. I didn't point. I just told the story again. Told it softer this time. Less anger, more anatomy. I described what it feels like when love is conditional and how you learn to bend your voice before your back. How silence gets inherited like a disease and how hard it is to be the first one to say, it ends here. After the panel, I stepped outside and found her waiting near the exit. We didn't hug, we didn't speak, but she reached into her purse and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photo of her young, maybe 20, with my grandfather. He was scowling, her shoulders were tense. On the back, one line, he made me small, I made you silent, you made her brave. I didn't cry, not then. I cried 2 nights later when Lily asked me if she could give a speech at school about sunflowers. Why, I asked. Because they stand up, she said, even when they're scared. And I want the kids who are scared to know they're not alone. I helped her write it. She stood in front of her 2nd grade class and said, my name is Lily. I grow sunflowers with my mom. Some people say flowers are soft, but sunflowers are strong. They always look for the light. I do too. And that, I think, was the end, not of the pain. That still shows up sometimes, in dreams, in the way I flinch when people raise their voices, in the way I still expect apologies to come with conditions. But it was the end of the silence, the end of the shame, the end of pretending that survival has to look polite. Now, I teach full-time. I run the Breaking the Chain site on weekends. I speak when asked. I write when I can. Paul's working on a 2nd film, this one, about teachers who speak up. He asked me to consult. And Lily, she planted a new sunflower patch this spring. They're taller now, stronger. She named them after superheroes. One's called Audrey, one's called Me, and the tallest, she calls it Truth. It's not perfect, but it's enough. It's ours, and we're still growing. Story 2. I'm Alex, and today I turned 21. You'd think that'd matter, big milestone birthday, right? A small dinner, a cake, at least a happy birthday text from my parents. But of course, nothing. My family had other priorities. I wish I could say I was surprised, but honestly, this is par for the course. Since I was a kid, my parents made it clear I was their runner-up. My younger sister Emma is the golden child. Whatever she wants, she gets. Whatever attention she needs, it's hers. If I ever ask for something that even slightly inconveniences them, tough luck. Still, I clung to this tiny spark of hope that turning 21, finally an adult, would change things. I don't live at home anymore, so I dodge their favoritism most days, but surely on my 21st birthday, they'd make an exception, right? That morning, I texted the family group chat. Hey, what time are we meeting for dinner? Silence. Hours went by. I busied myself thinking someone would ping me back by early evening. Then came that familiar sinking feeling. I called my mom. She answered on the 2nd ring too calmly. Hey, Alex. What's up? I swallowed hard. We're still on for dinner tonight, right? A long pause, then a sigh. Oh, honey, she said, far too sweet. I should have told you earlier. We're going out tonight with Emma. She has some big news to celebrate. My stomach plummeted. Excuse me, I managed. Her tone stayed detached, almost bored. Emma's our focus tonight. We'll celebrate her news. Don't worry, a party for you next weekend." Behind her, I heard Emma's voice. "Is that Alex? Tell him we'll save him some leftovers." I hung up my birthday, disappearing in the background of their perfect little world. More laughter. I felt my face heat up. This wasn't just neglect. This was deliberate. I could have argued. I could have yelled. But what was the point? They knew what they were doing. They just didn't care. So I swallowed the lump in my throat and said, "Yeah, sure, have fun." And then I hung up. I sat there for a moment staring at my phone. My hands were shaking, not from sadness. No, I was pissed. Then I had an idea. I called my girlfriend Lily. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice even. "Want to go out for dinner tonight?" She could tell something was up immediately. "Of course. What's wrong?" I told her everything. She didn't even hesitate. "Come over. My parents will want to celebrate with you too. Now." I love Lily's parents. They've always treated me with more kindness in the past 3 years than my own parents have my whole life. And when I got to their house, her mom greeted me with a hug. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. Come in. We're going somewhere nice." We ended up at this high-end steakhouse, the kind of place my parents love to brag about going to. The whole night was perfect. Lily's dad even ordered a bottle of champagne to celebrate me turning 21. And for the first time that day, I actually felt wanted. But the real fun that happened when I posted about it. After dinner, I took a picture of the restaurant entrance and posted it on Instagram with the caption, "Huge thank you to my girlfriend and her amazing family for making my birthday special. So grateful to have people who actually care about me." I wasn't expecting a response from my parents. I figured they wouldn't even see it until the next day. But less than an hour later, my phone started blowing up. First, a text from my mom. "Mom, what is this post, Alex?" Then my dad. "Dad, are you serious right now?" Then a full-on phone call. I let it ring, smirking to myself. Then another, then another. They were fuming, and I knew exactly why. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was jealousy. They were the ones who were supposed to be seen as the good parents. They loved playing the role of the perfect family, posting online about their fancy dinners and how proud they were of Emma. But suddenly, I was the one getting attention for being wronged, and they hated that. I finally picked up on the fourth call, keeping my voice casual. "Oh, hey, Mom. What's up?" She went off. "What the hell are you doing, Alex? People are seeing this. You're making us look bad." I held back a laugh. "I'm just thanking the people who actually showed up for my birthday." She gasped like I had stabbed her. "How dare you try to embarrass us like this? You know we would have celebrated with you if we didn't have prior commitments." I snorted. "Oh, right. More exciting news. We raised you, Alex," she snapped, "and this is how you repay us, by making us look like that." Parents. I was done, so done. I took a deep breath and said, "If you didn't want to look like bad parents, you probably shouldn't have acted like bad parents." Silence. Then my dad got on the phone. "You need to take that post down now." I grinned. "No, Alex." His voice was low, threatening. "If you don't take it down, there will be consequences." I leaned back in my chair. "Oh, like what?" He didn't answer right away. I could hear my mom whispering furiously in the background. Then he said, "We're coming over." And that Reddit is where things got really interesting. I leaned forward, gripping my phone as my dad's words echoed in my ear. "We're coming over." A rush of adrenaline shot through me, but I kept my voice steady. "All right," I said, barely able to contain my smirk. "See you soon." Then I hung up. Lily, who had been sitting next to me on the couch, raised an eyebrow. "That was your parents, wasn't it?" "Oh, yeah," I said, shaking my head. "They're pissed. Apparently I've embarrassed them." Lily rolled her eyes. God forbid they deal with the consequences of their own actions. Her dad, who had been listening from across the room, scoffed. "Let them come. They should see what an actual loving family looks like." Her mom, ever the voice of reason, sighed. "This might get ugly. Are you sure you want to deal with them tonight?" I exhaled slowly. "Honestly, yeah, I do. I'd spent years letting them treat me like an afterthought. Years of watching them drop everything for Emma, while I was expected to just deal with it. And for the first time, I had the upper hand. They were desperate, scrambling to control the narrative. That meant I was finally doing something right. About 20 minutes later, I heard the unmistakable sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I stood up, stretching like I had all the time in the world, while Lily gave me an encouraging squeeze on the arm. You got this, she murmured. The doorbell rang. No. Slammed 3-4 times in rapid succession. Oh, they're mad, Matt. Lily's dad chuckled and made his way toward the door. I'll get it. The second he opened it, my mom stormed in like she owned the place. My dad followed, his jaw tight, his eyes immediately locking onto me. Alex! My mom's voice was sharp, cutting through the air. We need to talk now. I crossed my arms. Go ahead. Her gaze flickered around the room, taking in Lily's parents, the cozy atmosphere, the clear evidence that I was fine, thriving, even without them. It clearly unsettled her. Not here, she said stiffly. Come outside. No thanks, I said, leaning against the couch. If you have something to say, you can say it right here. My dad clenched his fists. Enough with the attitude, Alex. I raised an eyebrow. Attitude? Oh, you mean standing up for myself? Sorry. I'm still getting used to this whole having self-respect thing. My mom let out a sharp breath, her patience wearing thin. We are not going to let you publicly shame us like this. Do you have any idea how many people have seen your post? Your aunts? Your uncles? Do you know how humiliating it is to have our own son paint us as villains? I blinked at her, then deadpanned. Maybe don't be villains then. Lily snorted, and even her dad fought back a chuckle. My mom's face turned red. We are your parents, Alex. We deserve some respect. Oh, respect. You mean like the respect you showed me when you ditched me on my birthday? Or when you laughed at me on the phone, but when you made it abundantly clear that Emma will always come first? I shook my head. Sorry. I must have missed the part where you actually earn my respect. My dad took a step forward, his voice low. You're being dramatic. No, I'm finally being honest, I shot back. The tension in the room was thick. My parents weren't used to this. They were used to me backing down, apologizing for folding. But not this time. Then my mom's gaze landed on Lily. More specifically, the way she was sitting so comfortably beside me, holding my hand like she belonged in my life. And that's when I saw it. The moment my mom realized that I had people now. People who weren't obligated to love me, but did anyway. People who saw my worth. Something she never cared to do, and she hated it. So this is what this is about, she said, voice dripping with condescension. You're trying to replace us with them. Lily stiffened beside me, but I just shrugged. If the shoe fits, my dad scoffed. Enough of this nonsense. You're taking that post down now. I grinned. No. His nostrils flared. Alex, don't test me, or what I challenged. What exactly are you going to do? Ground me, take away my phone. Oh wait, you can't, because I don't live under your roof anymore. You have zero control over me. That hit a nerve. My dad's face turned an ugly shade of red, and for a second, I thought he was actually going to lose it. My mom, on the other hand, had gone eerily quiet, and that's when she played her trump card. You're going to regret this, Alex, she said softly. You don't realize what you're throwing away. I tilted my head. What am I throwing away exactly? She gave me a knowing look. I looked at send a cold chill down my spine, and then she said, your inheritance. I couldn't help it. I actually laughed in her face. It was almost instinctual, like a reflex. I couldn't hold back. I looked at my mom, eyes narrowing, and let out a short, bitter laugh. Inheritance, I echoed, still chuckling. What inheritance? You think I need your money. You really don't get it, do you? She froze, clearly thrown off by my reaction. I leaned forward, crossing my arms. You've never done anything for me. You've made it clear every chance you've gotten that I'm not important enough for your time, your energy, or your love, so spare me the lecture about what I'm throwing away. Because guess what? You've got nothing left to give me. My mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish, her face twisted in a mix of confusion and anger. And if you think I'd ever accept anything from you after all this, you're delusional. I continued, shaking my head. I don't need your money. I don't need your fake love. You've already given me everything I need to know about you, and it's nothing I'm willing to keep around. My dad looked like he was about to explode. He took a deep breath, his fist clenched at his sides. You're ungrateful. You really want to throw away everything we've given you? I almost felt sorry for him. But then I remembered he had a choice too. He could have stood up for me, could have actually been a parent instead of a lapdog to my mom's whims. He never did. No. I'm not ungrateful, I said calmly. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend I don't see the kind of people you are. You made your choices, and now I'm making mine. Lily's dad gave me a reassuring nod from across the room, his eyes full of quiet pride. I noticed my mom flinch at that, and I couldn't help but feel a small sense of triumph. She had been so consumed with controlling my life that she'd never even stopped to think that I might be better off without her. You can't just cut us out of your life like this, my mom said, her voice trembling now. We're your family. You'll regret this, Alex. You'll come crawling back, right? I said sarcastically. I'll be right there begging for more empty promises and disrespect. But that'll never happen, because guess what? You've already shown me who you really are. I stood up, my legs feeling surprisingly steady. And I'm done, so if you want to keep throwing threats and guilt trips at me, go ahead. But just know I'm not falling for it anymore. My dad opened his mouth again, but this time he just snapped it shut. They had nothing left. The power they once held over me, the manipulation, the control. It was gone. My mom's eyes were practically burning with fury, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I turned to Lily's parents, giving them a nod of appreciation. Thanks for letting me have this moment, I said softly. But I think it's time for them to leave. Lily's mom, Ever, the calm one, smiled and stood up. We're going to grab a drink in the kitchen. You two should talk. As they walked away, my mom's voice shot through the silence. You're making a mistake, Alex. You'll see. I didn't even acknowledge her. I was done listening to their empty threats. I didn't need to say anything else. The silence between us was thick, suffocating, as my mom and dad stood there, still processing everything I'd just thrown at them. They had no idea what to do with me anymore. Their usual tactics, guilt manipulation, the emotional blackmail they had always used to keep me under their thumb weren't working. Not this time. I stood there feeling more powerful than I ever had in my entire life. It wasn't just the fact that I was finally standing up to them. It was the realization that I no longer cared about their approval. Lily's parents stayed in the background, sensing the tension, but giving us the space we needed. I could feel their support without it ever needing to be said. They weren't just on my side. They were family in a way that felt real. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for existing. Finally, my dad spoke again, his voice low and dangerous. You think this is funny? You think you're going to get away with treating us like this? I locked eyes with him, unfazed. Get away with it, Dad. I've been trying to get away from you for years. The words hung in the air, stark and painful. It was like a weight I'd been carrying for so long, finally lifted off my chest. My mom, still fuming, tried one last tactic. Her voice softened, but it was clear she was just as manipulative as ever. Alex, we're your parents. We've always been here for you. All we've ever wanted was to help you. Don't you remember all we've done for you, how we've always supported you? I shook my head, trying not to laugh again. Really, is that what you think? Because I don't remember any of it. I remember being ignored, pushed aside, made to feel like I wasn't good enough. I remember being the last choice. But sure, if you want to pretend that you've been perfect, go ahead. Her face twisted in a mixture of shock and fury, and I could see the cracks in her perfect little world start to form. She hadn't expected me to fight back like this. She thought I would fold, then I would cave in and beg for their approval like I always had. But that wasn't who I was anymore. This is your fault, Alex, my mom spat, her voice shaking. You're the one destroying this family. You think you can just replace us with them. I looked at her, my eyes cold. No, Mom. You've been replacing me my whole life. This is just me finally realizing I don't need you anymore, and you've already lost. She took a step forward, her eyes burning with rage. I'm your mother. You will never get rid of me. I held up my hand, cutting her off. I don't need to get rid of you. You've already done that to yourself. You've pushed me away for years. You've made it clear where your priorities lie, and I'm not on that list. Lily's dad stepped forward, his calm demeanor cutting through the tension. I think it's time for you two to leave now. His voice was steady, unshakable in the finality, and his tone made it clear there would be no more discussion. My mom stared at him, fury flashing in her eyes, but even she knew she was losing. My dad muttered something under his breath, and started to walk toward the door, his shoulders tense. But he didn't say another word. They both walked out without another word, the door slamming behind them. I stood there still processing everything that had just happened. It was surreal. Lily came over and wrapped her arms around me. "You did it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You stood up for yourself. I'm so proud of you." I hugged her back, feeling a rush of relief wash over me. I don't even know how I did it. It's like they just finally don't have any power over me anymore. Her mom and dad came over and gave me encouraging pats on the back, but it was Lily's words that really stuck with me. "You're not alone anymore. We've got your back. Always." The weight on my chest had finally lifted. For the first time, I could breathe without that constant pressure weighing me down. I could see a future where I didn't have to beg for scraps of love or attention. A future where I made my own choices, where I was in control. The whole night felt like a strange, surreal blur, but I knew one thing for sure. I had finally stood up for myself, and I wasn't going back. Hours passed in. The evening continued on in a strange kind of calm. The tension that had built up throughout the night seemed to have evaporated the moment my parents walked out the door. But that calmness didn't last long. Just as I started to relax, my phone burst. I glanced down at it, half expecting something Monday, but as I saw my mom's name flashed across the screen, I could feel my blood pressure rise again. I didn't even want to look at it, but I did anyway. A text from her. "We're not done here. You'll regret this. We'll be contacting the lawyer about your inheritance. You'll pay for this." I could almost hear her shrill, venomous voice in my head as I read the message. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise, and I knew it. But the difference now is that it didn't scare me anymore. It didn't hold the weight it once did. I glanced at Lily, who was sitting next to me, her parents giving us some space to just process the night. I showed her the message, and she let out a soft laugh. "Is she serious?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Dead serious," I muttered, but there was no trace of fear in my voice. If anything, I was amused. I hit the reply button, my fingers typing with confidence, almost like the words were coming from a part of me I didn't even know existed. "You're right. You won't be done here. But I'll tell you this. Keep your money. You can keep your inheritance. And when you decide you want to talk to me like an adult without the threats and the manipulation, you know where to find me. But don't bother trying anything else. It won't work. And if you think I'm scared, you've got another thing coming." I hit send, and the weight that had been on my shoulders for so long felt even lighter. It felt like I had closed a chapter of my life that had dragged on for way too long. Just as I put my phone down, it buzzed again. This time it was my dad. He didn't even bother with a message, just a string of angry voice notes. I clicked on the first one, listening to him rant about how I was ruining my life, how I was going to regret this, how I was throwing everything away. I let the message finish, then click the next one. Another tirade, the same insults, the same empty threats, and then another, and another. They were getting more frantic, the desperation in his voice growing, but none of it hit home. I didn't even bother replying. I didn't need to. There was nothing left for me to say. Lily's dad caught my eye from across the room, raising his eyebrows with a knowing look. "Everything okay?" I nodded, my lips curling into a small but satisfied smile. "Yeah. They're just not used to me standing up for myself, but they'll get over it." Lily leaned in closer, wrapping her arms around me again. "You've got this. They can't touch you anymore." And that was the truth. I realized something then. There was nothing they could take from me that mattered. Not their threats, not their manipulations, not even their inheritance. I'd already walked away from their version of family and stepped into something real. My phone buzzed again, and I glanced down. This time it was a text from my sister. "Mom and Dad are furious with you. You really messed up this time." I could feel the old anger bubbling up again, but this time I wasn't going to let it control me. I wasn't going to get sucked into her drama, her victim complex. I wasn't going to play her game. Instead of replying, I looked at Lily, smiling warmly. "You know what I said standing up? I think it's time for a celebration. I'm done with all of this." I grabbed my jacket, turning to Lily's parents with a grin. "Let's go grab some drinks. We've got a lot to celebrate." As we left, I didn't feel the bitterness or regret I had expected. Instead, I felt like I was finally walking away from a life that had been holding me back into a future that was mine to shape. And as I stepped out into the cool night air, I realized that the family I'd been searching for, the family I had been longing for, had been here all along. Not in the people I was born to, but in the ones who chose to stand by me, who supported me, who cared about me. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore. I didn't need their toxic love or their manipulation. I had found something better, and nothing, not even their money or their threats, could take that away from me. And that, for the first time in my life, felt like true freedom. So what do you think? Am I out of line for standing up to them? Or did I do the right thing?